So when he created him in perfection. When God created man, there was no deformity in man. There was no confusion in man because the man was not deformed. He was formed in perfection to the reflection of God. And so it's critical that we understand where we started at in order to be reformed. See, a lot of people don't come to God because they don't see that they need God. Because all of their life they have lived normal. For them, the normal was to be deformed. And when being deformed is the normal thing, you think that there is nothing else. Some people think it's normal to live in sin. Some people think that it's normal to live in fornication. Some people think that it's normal to grow up in a contentious and a divisive home. Some people think it's normal for all these different things that a lot of times we face on a day-to-day basis. But God did not create us with that intention. When He formed us in perfection. And it was this original formation that actually approved Adam to live in perfect harmony with God. Once that kind of interruption happened, we were no longer in harmony with God. And so we all know that something happened along the way. Something happened that disconnected us from God, that brought about a separation, something that distorted us to the point that we experienced both a spiritual separation from God as well as a physical separation as well. That's why when Adam and Eve fall, one of the things that God does is that He removes them from the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was reserved for a man who was in perfect harmony with God, where time did not exist. Did you know when God created man, time did not exist? Did you know that time is the byproduct of sin? That's why we only have a certain amount of time here on earth. Some of us are here for a moment, gone here today and gone tomorrow. And a lot of times we think that we somehow are going to be invincible, or no matter how many times people die, aren't we always surprised when somebody passes away? I mean, everybody was surprised this week when they heard that Prince had passed away, as if nobody dies, as if we're supposed to live forever. But the fact is that all of us have a specific, determined amount of time in which we live here on earth. But God did not design us that way. There was a deformity that occurred as a result of sin, that now we are subject to time and we are also subject to space. In other words, I can't try to walk through that wall right there and expect to get to the other side without experiencing pain or even death. Because I'm limited by time, I'm limited by space. Okay? And so we know that whenever something becomes deformed, it strays from the course of its original formation, and it can no longer live with the things that it once lived or was connected to. If you know how an upright piano works or how an acoustic piano works, you know that the keys that are on the piano is not what gives it the sound. The keys send a signal to some strings that are inside that piano that give it that sound and give it that intonation. Now, when one of those strings, because over time they either get stretched out, expand, or extract, they become deformed, you hear a note that is off tune and doesn't sound right with the rest of the notes. And that's exactly what happened when man experienced sin, no longer could he be connected directly with God, because now there was something that interrupted that harmonious connection. And part of the thing that we lost as a result of this sin and this fall was dominion. We lost the power to have the authority over our flesh, over time, over the animal kingdom, and over even death itself. And so the question is, where did this occur, and what could have caused such a deformation in the spirit of the man that caused such a separation from God, that caused us all of a sudden to fall short of his glory? And we know that in chapter 3, verse 2, the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat from the fruit trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat from that tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." And so the serpent responded and said, "You will not certainly die. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." See, we see here that the devil tends to tell us half-truths. And how many know that half-truths are whole lies? And the half-truth to this part is that he says that you will be able to know the difference between good and evil. The lie part was that he said, "You shall not die." And so a lot of times the enemy brings us a half-truth so that we come in agreement with him. And so whenever we come in agreement with the devil's lie, all of a sudden we are in opposition to God's will. And when we become in opposition to God's will, all of a sudden we experience separation. It's not that the devil's stronger than you. It's not that he can overcome you. It's that when you begin to agree with his lies, all of a sudden you begin to give him authority over your life. All of a sudden you begin to empower him in certain areas of your life where he does not otherwise have any right to. And so the question is, what was the sin that led this to them? Was it that they ate from the wrong tree? The sin here was, listen to what he says, if you eat of the tree. He says, these are the benefits. This is what's going to happen if you eat of the tree. He says, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. The sin of pride, trying to be like God, trying to come up to God's level instead of allowing us to live under the authority of God. Because it's not about you, it's about you coming in agreement with what God has declared over your life. And it is that very thing that will allow you to be reformed, reshaped into the image of his dear son, Jesus Christ. How many believe that?